Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, December 2nd, 2020, and today we're going to be talking about Donald Trump and his national popular vote result. I know many of us are probably tired of looking at the electoral map, so I'm going to get that out of your way for a brief period of time. Joe Biden obviously won the popular vote. He received millions of more votes than President Trump, but both candidates broke the record for the most votes received for a presidential election candidate in United States history. Joe Biden received 81 million votes. Donald Trump received 74 million votes. Joe Biden received 51.3% of the popular vote. Donald Trump received 46.9%. And that 46 number is a number that is all too familiar to the Trump campaign because even in 2016, when Donald Trump won more than 10 million less votes than this time, he only received 46.1% of the popular vote. He increased by a little bit under 1%. Joe Biden, however, compared to Secretary Clinton, improved by over 3%. That's why the popular vote margin is so different. And while Joe Biden did very well on the popular vote, Donald Trump did better than 2016, but not even enough to break that 47% mark. And with a lot of these outstanding votes being from predominantly Democratic areas, it's only going to get worse from here. So let's go ahead and take a look at where Donald Trump compared to the Republican Party as a whole. He received roughly 2 million more votes than the Republicans down ballot, actually 1.5 million more votes, but less of a percent. The Democratic Party only received 50.7% of the national popular vote in the United States House of Representatives. The Republicans received 47.8%. Joe Biden outperformed the Democrats, and Donald Trump underperformed the Republican Party, which means that in a lot of these races, we saw some people voting for Biden, but also voting for Republicans. This could be an effect of the suburbs, as we saw in a number of these races, that the Republican Party didn't win them on the presidential level, Georgia, Arizona, but the Republican Party did win in some of these races and also statewide based off congressional vote. So as we're looking across the country, the House map actually shows better results for the Republican Party. Looking at the swing from 2018, look at all of that red. Look at all of that red. If we're looking at the swing from 2016, arguably a better year for the Republican Party on the presidential level, but look at all of that blue. Now, I understand you may not think that it's fair to compare the two, but I do think it's fair because this was the last presidential election, that was the last House election, and usually if we were seeing the nation swing this far to the left, when the Democratic Party actually gained seats in 2016 despite losing seats now, I think that this election was not super strong for Democrats, but the popular vote shows us that the Democratic Party is starting to break away from the GOP. Because in 2016, one could argue, maybe in the future, the Republican Party could win the popular vote. California, New York, Texas, Florida seem to be leading factors as to why Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. Maybe she didn't win Texas, and maybe she didn't win Florida, but she sure as heck won the state of California and New York in margins that were able to counteract Donald Trump's ability to win some of these other states by similar margins because they're smaller. They don't have as many people. In 2012, we actually saw Mitt Romney receive a higher percent of the vote than Donald Trump. That one has to hurt. Joe Biden received more votes than Barack Obama in 2012, and based off raw vote share in 2008 as well. In 2008, when Barack Obama had a campaign that we had never seen before, flipping Indiana, Virginia, North Carolina, states that hadn't flipped in nearly half a century in some cases, Barack Obama won it with 69.49 million votes nationally. Now, yes, the United States population did increase, but it shouldn't have been this high. At least this election, based off of Joe Biden as a candidate, should not have been comparable, in fact, surpassing Obama in 2008 by over 10 million votes. Barack Obama, sorry about that, ran a very strong campaign, defeated John McCain by 10 million votes. And look at those percentages. John McCain actually underperformed Donald Trump, but not by a lot, by just a little bit over a percentage point. Look at 2004. That was the last time the Republican Party actually won the popular vote. Look at the numbers. 62 million votes for George Bush, 50.7%. John Kerry received 48.3%. Even in 2000, Al Gore received 48.4%. George Bush received 47.9%. Donald Trump has had the worst showing in the 21st century for a Republican president and for a Republican candidate besides John McCain. That isn't super strong. Looking further, taking out this election, the Democratic Party had won the popular vote all but once in every election, all but once. And then they lose the Electoral College twice. George W. Bush and Donald Trump, the Republican Party's only victory in the popular vote was in 2004. And that streak continues. Reiterating that, in the 21st century, the Republican Party has only won the popular vote once, despite winning the election 3 times. And this time, they lost the popular vote again. Donald Trump is claiming that the election was rigged. He's claiming there was fraud in a number of these states, and without evidence. And overall, I think that that's something that he's going to have to handle himself. His campaign is going to have to handle. But you cannot deny the fact that this election victory was accompanied by the largest popular vote share, or raw vote total, for a specific candidate in United States history. That cannot be ignored. You know who was also right about the national popular vote? The pollsters. Maybe they didn't get the margin spot on. I mean, it was off by roughly 4 points. But Biden actually received roughly the same amount that he was expected to receive. Take a look at the numbers. 51.8% to 51.3%. It's only off by 0.5. Donald Trump just received a very significant portion of those undecided and independent voters, which makes sense. These voters that were voting for Joe Biden seem to have had their minds made up. As we saw in 2016, a lot of independents and undecided voters moved over or moved to Donald Trump, whether for the first time or switching from Joe Biden. But the election at the end of the day ended up with Joe Biden winning the popular vote, but Donald Trump dropping below 47%. And this is going to be the start of a very constant trend that we will see. Regardless if the Democrats or the Republicans win the presidential election, the Democratic Party starts out at an advantage at winning the popular vote. They start out at an advantage. The Republican Party has had trouble with this popular vote. They've had trouble making inroads into certain states that hold very large populations. Let me surprise you with something very briefly. Let's go back to the time the Republican Party won the national popular vote. Well, this was 2004. Can you guess the margin of victory that John Kerry won California by? It was not 30%. It was not even by a double-digit amount. John Kerry won California by 9.95%. The way George W. Bush won the popular vote this election was by keeping it moderately close in some of these Democratic states. And I mean, look at that number. A single-digit victory in California at the time was 55 electoral votes. It's still 55 electoral votes. That's shocking. But John Kerry only won it by 9.95%. And George Bush won the popular vote because he was able to keep it close in some of these states and run it up in others. Look at Texas. George Bush received 61% of the vote. He defeated John Kerry in the second most populous state by 23 percentage points. Joe Biden lost this state by a mere 5.6%. 23 points versus 5.6%. That's how much that state has swung. And you remember that single-digit victory in California? Up to 29% for Joe Biden. And this isn't going to change. The only thing that might change is that Texas gets even bluer. Because as we go forward, the entire nation is moving to the left. The Democratic Party of 2008 is comparable, I would say, to some parts of the Republican Party today. They held very conservative views. Barack Obama, by today's standard, would be probably one of the furthest to the center Democrats. Despite having a very progressive message back in 2008, what he stood for, even still being, anti-LGBT in 2008, there are a number of things that wouldn't exactly paint him as a standard or traditional Democrat to what we're used to. And with that leftward push across the country, we are now seeing the Democratic Party win the popular vote consistently. This election was close. In order for Joe Biden to get the same amount of electoral votes as Donald Trump, he had to win the popular vote by 6 million votes. Donald Trump only had to lose it by 2 million. So this is going to also start raising questions about the validity of the Electoral College. And we're never going to get rid of it, at least not now. The American people may like it, but now that it's become a polarized issue, senators and others are not going to jump onto it as an immediate fix. Even the president himself, who previously was okay with the abolition of the Electoral College, as we've seen in his tweets in 2012, has become recently opposed to it. And with that, the majority of those 74 million Americans are also opposed to it. So it's going to be very difficult to do. But as we will move forward, the Democratic Party is likely to win the popular vote no matter what type of election it is, because of their overwhelming victories in California, their overwhelming victories in New York, their overwhelming victories in Illinois, their victories across the country in populous states, and winning millions of votes in Texas, millions of votes in Florida. Enough so to make these states, sure, they could still go to the Republican Party, but make them add up and add to the electoral amount and the popular vote amount. And I think the Democratic Party is just going to win the popular vote because of their ability to solidify already Democratic states, overwhelmingly Democratic states, not necessarily swing states that voted for the Democrats this time, but we're talking California, we're talking New York, we're talking Maryland, we're talking Massachusetts, solid Democratic states. And if you're looking at the margin of victory for Biden here, they're not comparable to Donald Trump's margin of victory in populous states. I mean, look at it. 29 points in California to 6 points in Texas. 22.4 points in New York to 3.4 points in Florida. Trump is winning, and he's getting a lot of votes from California. The most votes for Donald Trump's campaign from a singular state comes from California. But Joe Biden has over double the amount of those votes. So Joe Biden and the Democrats should be very confident in their popular vote performances. But as we've seen, as Al Gore has seen, as Hillary Clinton has seen, the popular vote is not always an indicator of who wins the Electoral College. And Joe Biden did win both. But in future elections, even if the Democrats lose the Electoral College, I am 100% confident that for the next few decades, they will win almost 95% of the time, if not 100% of the time in the popular vote. The nation is divided, but they do lean a little bit more to the left. They are just condensed in very populous states that don't significantly change based off of electoral count, states that are underrepresented in the Electoral College. But overall, the Democratic Party will probably be winning the popular vote for years to come, and this election only solidifies that. The most votes cast for any presidential candidate in United States history are both a Democrat and a Republican, but the Democrat this time got way more votes than the Republican. On top of that, Donald Trump still hasn't cracked 47%. And with these outstanding votes, with the votes that we still have yet to see come in from the state of New York, roughly 8%, we're seeing from Queens County, New York. We see 72% of the vote there for Joe Biden. It's only going to get worse. It is only going to get worse for President Trump from here. The fact that he underperformed the Republicans in the House of Representatives when they couldn't even win the House, when they held this entire map for 8 years, they could not even win the House. He underperformed them. And moving into future elections, many Republicans are likely to follow suit. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2020 post-election videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.